Hello everyone, welcome on a new episode of Robert Spotlight.
Doing all this moderation stuff for Discord.
I'm a social media futurist.
Been a moderator at Be Friends.
Now it's my project because I love sports.
I'm speaking at NFT NYC.
Welcome on the show. Welcome everyone and welcome on a new episode of Robert Spotlight. And Robert Spotlight today, Ronan. Ronan, welcome on the show.
Hi. Well, thank you, Robert. Happy to be here.
Perfect. Ronan, could you present yourself for people that don't know you?
Okay, so I'm Ronan. I'm a game developer inspired by like blockchain technology. So kind of focusing on what blockchain enable, especially what I call infinite games, which games that never end and can be expanded in many ways.
Perfect. And how long have you been doing that?
So as a game developer, I started early, but my professional career started like around 2010, working on like web game, like Facebook game, mobile game. But then I discovered Ethereum around like 2016. And I realized, that's cool. We can do things that we could not do before. So kind of, I left my job to go full time on it and started always with the idea of building games. But my perspective have changed over the year, and kind of I'm sure will change again. But kind of now I see the technology is getting to a stage where we can really explore very interesting ideas.
Okay, perfect. And you say that you have discovered Ethereum in 2016, right?
Yeah.
How did you discover it? Do you remember what was happening back in the day?
Yeah, I mean, I remember. Actually, the first time I saw the website was in 2015. I remember like the website, the picture of the Far West, and this idea that you could build unstoppable application. That's the sentence I remember. And for me, it was like build unstoppable games.
Okay.
But I remember I just bookmarked it. I didn't have time. And like many things I bookmark, I never come back to it. But by luck, in I think it was around March, I fell again on Ethereum. And then I realized, okay, let's sit down. And I started to play with it since then. And yeah, kind of that's so. I remember like playing with. To me, it kind of came back to my origin, the way I came into programming with calculator, where you have a very limited thing you can do, but what you can explore is fascinating.
Okay, perfect. And you say that you are into building unlimited thing, right? You say that, but you also say that about when you discover Ethereum, you were fascinating about the new option. Could you walk through what was the new thing that was open to you in 2016?
So I think in 2016, I mean, for me, it was this idea of like you develop a program and it run on its own. There is no more, and so, but from the perspective of a game, it's something I think for me fascinating. It's like you create a game that suddenly live on its own. And I think for me, originally, I don't think I knew what it means, but obviously my first idea was like, let's build like a Dungeon and Dragon game running on chain. But then I realized, wait, that will cost a lot. And so I kind of changed at that time. I realized that what can I do that works? And that's why I explore something more where the gameplay is off chain, but you have the verification on chain. So, but then I changed my perspective. I realized that actually we can do stuff. And the funny thing to me is that what I do today could have worked very well back then because the gas price and everything was a lot cheaper back then. So it's interesting to see how it's a different mindset you have to establish yourself in, and then things become possible basically.
Okay. So so you have made a connection between 2016 and today, so 2023, and you say that basically what you are doing right now was more easier to put in on chaîne in 2016?
So I mean, it's all about. So what I mean is that it's about learning what is possible, and so what I mean is that today, like for example, I'm making this game Conquest, and this game could have run. I mean, Conquest uses die currently as a staking mechanism, but we could have imagined back in 2016 that it used simply Ether, and the gas cost then was. I mean, it was still maybe expensive, and obviously it was fluctuating. That was the main issue for me even back then, like the fact that okay, you build something with an assumption that the gas is, and then it increased, and then you realize like, oh, okay, that, and you knew back then, you knew that the gas could increase. That was definitely something known. But there was also the ice age. I mean, there is a kind of interesting story if we want to go more in detail, but there was this period during which the gas price was increasing, and by protocol design. But assuming all of this was not there, and you could definitely do stuff back then because the gas was cheaper. And now there is L2 and there is sidechain, or I mean, other alternative L1 where you can explore. And I think that's a decision I took like in 2018, 2019. I realized, okay, even if we have limitation today, we can see that the future is going to be bright. So let's do stuff on the EVM, assuming we are getting better down the line. And so that's where I started to tell myself, okay, yeah, we can do on-chain game. We can do this game that really run forever. And maybe we have to wait a bit before they can really be decentralized. But I think the more now I'm thinking is actually, depending of the game design, you can even run things today on like L2s. So that's kind of what I'm exploring, both with Conquest and with some other game.
Okay, perfect. And with what you just said, all the game design is different with a decentralized approach versus a centralized approach. There is something very kind of a different structure by design, or how could you compare, a game design between a decentralized built on top of decentralization versus a centralization?
Yeah, I think it's a big difference you have, because in some way, when you are in a centralized approach, you can do things, you have shortcuts you can make, and when it's in decentralized, like it's an open API, so there is no way you can prevent anyone doing anything on it. So the obvious use case is the bots that can come to grind into your game. So any grind mechanism that let you get reward will not work on the. It need to be something more complex, more that require a human interaction. So that the way I see a lot of on-chain game is that one way to solve the bot issue is to make the game at a human level, so a social level. So that's what happened in Conquest. Like for you to win, you have to collaborate with others, and that's where like bots will, at least today, will fail. But it's interesting to just on that note, like there is interesting research published recently about like how AI managed to beat humans on the game of diplomacy, which is a board game where a lot of it is about how do you make alliances with other players, and the two AI managed to beat two humans. That kind of so that's interesting. But I think with games that are infinite, so that kind of what I explore in one of my blog posts is the idea that not only so in case of diplomacy, as an example, you start with a fixed set of players, and this is predefined, and then the game have an end. But when you make the game infinite, I think the social aspect become even more complex for AI to play with, because in an infinite game, basically anybody can join at any time. They can also leave, and it introduces so interesting new design constraint, but also solution to problem. I think sometimes it's important to highlight that, because in traditional game, like you have the problem of lobby, which you need to have people. You need to find people to play, and at the same time, which can be cumbersome unless you are already a popular game. So by making the game infinite, you cannot in some way solve this problem by letting people to come at any time. But in terms of design, there is also other issue to tackle. One of them is collision and Sybil. So collision is the fact that, let's say I have a 3-player game, so one interesting aspect of game on chain is usually there is this element of reward, this element of money, this element of value, and this is why it runs on blockchain, and this is why we don't want to have to trust anyone else. But then it means that if there is a game of 3 players, then 2 players could decide to share the winnings and always beat the 1 player. And so one way is to make it infinite again, like you say, there is no limit to the number of players, and so then 2 players that join force against 1 doesn't mean still let the other one find someone else outside to join him again and kind of make the balance. So you have to design about this, you have to think about how do the game is resistant to Sybil and collision. So Sybil is another problem, is the fact that if you get, let's say, when you create an account or you get on the game, if that game gives you some resources for free, then obviously you will create 1 million account and you will have 1 million times these resources, which will break the game. So you have to think about how to go around this. In Conquest, the idea is to basically you deposit a risk. So that's one way to solve this, is like you get some resource, but you have a risk associated with it. I mean, like if I was to create 1 million account, I will basically create 1 million of this risk, which means that I am getting an advantage, but because I am risking that amount. So that's one way of solving it. So that's part of the game design. Another one is kind of what you can do with the gas limit that this blockchain kind of constraint. I mean, and the way I see it, I think we can, that's what I'm currently exploring. So I don't have a game live using this mechanism, but one idea is take inspiration from play by mail games. I never played these games, and to me it's fascinating, but it's people playing over mail by post. So there was someone taking care of the logic and player writing on a letter their next move. And then they send to that, and then he was waiting for everybody to make their move, and then he makes a new update by sending the update to every player, and this is by mail. And so it means that there was a cost, which is like maybe $1, $2 of for each round. And so I think we can get a lot of inspiration from it, because you have to design the game with this constraint. And so so I think it's an interesting thing to look at.
But regarding the gas limit and the example that you just provide with the next move done through May, did the idea was to design a game as there is a cost associated with your move that make your move very thoughtful, because you only have one shot, and it's not like, when you play a game, so on my head I'm picturing Game Boy. So it's like you play with Mario Bros, and you try one level, you die, okay, start again. But here with that example that you gave, it's like, okay, I have to think, because when I'm going to send my my move through May, it's done. I cannot do any reset. So did the idea was to force any player to have a lot of thought about the move, or did it for another purpose, this design?
Yeah, so I think, exactly. I think the idea is to kind of make it more about strategy. So if you have a grinding mechanism or a micro optimization in the game, you have to think about the design to remove that. And I think that one issue currently for Conquest is that while it was designed to be low on gas, what happened is that there is this micro optimization, which kind of give advantage to people who spend more gas, because they can do this little thing. And so you have to think about how do you remove this? And one idea, is to make sure that everything is decided. So one thing I'm exploring is to do a game where you can only play 3 or 4 times per week. And another important thing is that it doesn't matter at which point in the day. So let's say you have a full day to make your decision, but it doesn't matter whether you do the decision at the beginning of the day or at the end. And so this is another important thing to make the player at ease with his decision as well. But that, again, I guess it's another issue. But it's kind of the learning from running Conquest, which some player really enjoy this idea that it keep running forever, and this all and at any time can something happen. But for some players, they prefer to be more at peace with the fact that, okay, today I cannot check my game, and so they might prefer this kind of design where it's fine, they can just wait the next day and have the full day to see what happened. So it's kind of, I'm not sure what works best, and I think it will depend, of course, of the public, of the players. But there is a lot to explore on this. Yeah.
Yes, I get it. And did it possible to have the two in the same time? To kind of appease everyone. To have a population that love to be, on a daily basis, checking a lot of things, and another population that it's more like, okay, I don't have a lot of time, etc. But if I spend 3-4 times a week, it's working as well. Can we have these two worlds living within Conquest in the same time?
I mean, right now, no. I mean, I think it's an interesting approach, because I think we can see, like with on-chain game, what we could see is we could have a different layer. I mean, we see that in some way with Axie Infinity, with like some player like investing and some other like basically working for. And we could imagine that in so Conquest have been designed to be a very simple core mechanics, but then later the idea is to add more complex one. And maybe what we could see that some players are interested in some layer and some other are different layer, and this could be a way to separate this thing as well. Like you said, like one are playing every day because they need to, and some other mechanics rely on maybe a more. So that's another approach, I think. I didn't think much about that way, but that could be interesting.
Okay, perfect. And today, so it's kind of more than 5 years that you are using blockchain to create infinite game. What are the things that you see today that excite you the most? Did there is any kind of new discovery? The same thing that happened for you in 2016 when you discover Ethereum. You bookmark the thing, but you get back to it. Did there is anything that you can bookmark today that you bookmark maybe yesterday or this month regarding something that you say, oh, that I have to have my eyes on that?
So I can think of not to the same extent back, but I think the one thing that really fascinates me, and it's like zero knowledge proofs, and now you can use them for achieving some game design that still let you run it on a public blockchain. So that's something I'm actually starting to play now as well, which I've. But yeah, I think there is interesting case, and also in general, every scaling solution out there, because what I mentioned, like we can design game with gas constraint. The more we increase our gas limit or reduce the cost of it, then we can explore more interesting, potentially like more interesting game design. And so the L2, I'm checking all. I'm especially interested in the concept of L2, or like trying to keep the decentralization in its purest form, but kind of scale with another layer. So I think this is the two things I'm kind of looking.
Okay. And can we dig a little bit about the zero knowledge proof? So which protocol are you using? And before going on the technical aspect, it's to dig a little bit on which use case did you picture adding this new protocol?
Yeah, so I mean, so the main technology I've been playing with was Circom, but I briefly looked at it, and now I'm looking at the Noir language by Aztec, which I think improves quite a lot the developer experience. So, and one use case I have is a game I'm right now thinking, which is basically the ability to player to keep information hidden while still operating over it. So you can keep like in Conquest, there is this information hidden, but and it works because like you send fleet, nobody know where they are going, and then you reveal them. But zero knowledge allow you to keep hiding the information over the time. So you could move your character and still that you can't cheat of the location. So it means you can move around, nobody know where you are, but you yourself cannot say, oh, actually I was there. So it means there is interesting mechanism you could play with where you can make a game of hide and seek kind of thing. And there is some project, I forgot the name, by Flynn on the Zero X Park residency was a very interesting. I don't have the link right now, but it was an interesting a video on all the capability that zero knowledge afford, and he went even further than what I just described because of or you can exchange information as well. So let's say you are in a specific location, and you can divulge that information to someone without the other revealing, and yeah, like even more complex. And I think so what I'm exploring right now doesn't need all this. What I'm exploring now is a two-player game, and so you don't need, in a two-player game, you don't need to divulge information because you want to either hidden or it's public, it's the same. But in a multiplayer, especially in the kind of game I'm interested in, which is like infinite, then you will need this extra capability of like being able to have, if you want to in an alliance with someone, they might want you to reveal your position or things like that.
Okay.
So the use case I'm focusing is always games, but obviously there is other kind of use case for zero knowledge.
Okay, perfect. And so you said zero knowledge, and what was the second thing that you have on the radar at this moment?
So any scaling solution.
Okay, yes, scaling solution.
But ideally that preserve like decentralization, and because I think we see two approach right now, like that. I mean, actually, we always have this kind of different approach. One of them back, like, so what get me realize that anyway we are getting there in 2018, 2019, like was this L1 like XDAI, and now like Gnosis Chain and Polygon, which we are starting up. Then was the realization that okay, these are a good way to have a cheaper cost and explore this idea, even though there is maybe there is a decentralization trade-off. But then now we are with L2, which kind of keep the decentralization. I mean, at least on paper. But then we have now these new kind of trade-offs that are being made, which is like that they can increase the like reduce the gas cost, but sacrifice on what they call data availability, which is the fact that okay, there is an issue that if we lose the data, we can't continue proving what is the state of the chain. But that could, I think some people are exploring that in a way that okay, that's fine for a game. Maybe, in my opinion, I would like to keep decentralization to the maximum, because a game is, I mean, I don't make this difference so much about like, oh, it's because it's a game is not important. The reason why we are building game on chain is because we realize that it makes a difference. But yeah, I think it's still interesting to see all of this. And for Conquest, my initial goal was to go on L2, and I still would like to, but due to its current design, it has to run on a L1, like it's run on Gnosis Chain right now. So I'm still interested with this trade-off as well.
Okay.
Depending of the game, basically.
All right. And so here I really understood the scaling. What you are looking to, it's scaling. What about either other chain or multi-chain? Did it something that crossed your mind as well?
So, I mean, it's tricky because if it's multi-chain, you have the problem of bridges. And so, but one way for Conquest currently, I can definitely go multi-chain in like each Conquest universe could be completely independent. So that's a nice outcome of the current design. But I've been thinking also of adding a token to make Conquest even more independent, because currently you rely on DAI basically. And then when you want to have your own token, you have to choose a chain, because suddenly, unless you multiply your token on multiple chain, which can be a weird setup, but maybe it could work. But that's the main issue with multi-chain. Basically, is the fact that if you want communication, which is basically, for example, let's say you have a token and you want it to be used as a single one across multi-chain, you have the problem of bridge. And so, it's tricky because you have to trust that bridge. So usually, I didn't really look much into that for this reason.
Okay. So it's really the trust issue due to the bridge that makes you disregard that aspect.
Yeah.
Okay. And I don't have a lot of knowledge about that, but I heard recently about a protocol called Layer 0, which is so I don't know if you know that. I don't have I didn't already done my homework into it, reading the white paper, etc. But my understanding, it's that can be seen as a layer above L1. So it's kind of kind of a language that when you write into it, it can be any other L1 can integrate with it.
Okay. I think I heard. I don't think I looked. I definitely heard the name and didn't look in detail. But if it's communicating, they still have the problem of bridge. I mean, they could have like a slashing mechanism, but then it's all about value. What value can you extract from an issue? So, and also they probably have upgrade. I mean, I don't know. I can't comment much.
Okay, no problem.
Yeah.
No problem. And as a whole, do you see, so as a kind of in the near future, in 10 years from now, do you see a future where bridging is common for gaming on a blockchain?
Yeah, I mean, so bridging is fine in its own, it depends on the context. So for example, on L2s, bridging is safe. So assuming we are past this current setup where, because L2 in theory is perfectly safe, but mostly, but in practice today they have upgrades, they have a lot of centralized component, but disregarding all of these issues, bridging are completely fine from L1 to L2, and this is completely fine from my setup. But the problem arises when you have two independent chain where the bridge become an issue. Having said that, I think it's still a valid thing to happen. Also, there is different kind of mechanism to communicate. But if it's one asset that could become in another, then you introduce a risk. But maybe it's fine. If the chain, there is this idea of app chain where you have this, but again, it could be L2 where it will be safe to do that. I feel we want to go past this idea of it's weird. I don't know. I like that we are exploring a lot of different view on in the whole space. There is not only one chain, there is many. But at the end of the day, for security, we want one. We want only one, because that's where we can have bridging across all these L2. It's a bit like maybe the analogy will be internet. We don't want two internet. We want only one. So, but I don't know. It's hard to see the far future, because we are at the beginning here, but I can see that bridging can be a nice solution for waiting for scale, for example. Like let's say you have a nice L1 or maybe your own L1, like a app chain that don't want to use any of the L2 mechanism, like to be safe. Instead, they say, okay, let's play. The game only lasts 1 month, and let's join in, and then when the game is over, you can bring back. And this can maybe work well because then maybe the 1 month thing make people feel safe about them. And the cool thing about in this scenario is that anyway, it's up to the player to choose to go over. Like they can keep their asset on the main chain. So that, yeah, I don't know. I don't know really what.
No problem. I like to pick the expertise brain of my guests, to ask questions that can be seen as weird, but maybe reveal insight, because even me, I cannot reply to that question. What I would say is I do picture a world in the near future where someone would want to have the freedom to choose, and if we talk about ownership, and so in an infinite game, we also, if we integrate the ownership around the asset on the game, we can assume that the person may want to keep the freedom to move the asset around, within one chain, but maybe in other chains. So it's why I was going on that direction.
Yeah.
Right. What about the business model? Like how your game is making money. If you want to talk about this subject.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. It's actually something I've always been thinking about. I think for Conquest, I started before really thinking about the business model, and then I realized, okay, people are enjoying the game. Like, let's focus on making the game work as its best. But my initial business model was that because in Conquest you have to deposit dollar into the game. The idea was like, let's use that dollar into something like Yearn, and they generate like 8-10%, whatever, and this will be the way to fund the company. But obviously that was like it assumed that there is enough money put into the game.
Yes.
And right now it doesn't work. It doesn't mean that it won't be like, but it's not a good business model to get started because there is no money enough. Like it's like maybe later, like in 10 years or whatever, like then there is Conquest in multiple chain, and then all of them will.
There is a compound effect.
Yeah, exactly. And so, but for the start, I didn't really think much for Conquest, but there is few avenues. Like one of them is to have own token, so kind of get rid of the DAI requirement. And then the interesting thing about having Conquest own token is that you can reward incentives a play, which is actually especially powerful for on-chain game because you can use the mechanic of the game to incentivize. You are not relying on a central authority to do that. So it's kind of a trustless incentives. So how we see that in liquidity pool and stuff like that. So there is a way to do that. It introduces issues though, because it means that the token is not stable, which is quite cool today. Like in Conquest, it's like what you put is what you get out if you are like an average player. But with a token, then suddenly you have this issue. So I would like to think a bit more about how we could solve that issue with different mechanism, but I didn't spend enough time to have idea right now. But for other games, I think I'm exploring this idea for a token actually. So the one thing about Conquest is that I have an initial idea and it works, and I'm afraid of touching it to break that. But for other game, I'm keen to explore this. So one idea is to have a token that works that way. Like you have to deposit that token to play, same like Conquest. And by depositing that risk into the game, you are rewarded more token. And so it's kind of like, that could be a business model in the sense that this token could also be given to the company as well. So it's kind of a ratio. And after that, there is also lots of different models that could come up later, like a sale of NFT that give special things. So in Conquest, there is a collection that is being worked on. I'm not sure yet if it will be a sale or not, but there is the idea about how to use it in the game, and I think it can be pretty cool to add. So yeah, but I don't know. I think it could also be a fee. It's something I've been thinking of actually as well. So like right now in Conquest, you put $5. If you have an average player and you want to leave, you get $5 back. If you are a good player, it means someone is less good and you will lose, but you will win. But maybe, so let's say for the average player, maybe what we could say that when you go in the game, you put $5, but maybe $1 go to Etherplay, the company behind Conquest, and then you only get $4. And maybe for a player, it might be fine enough. So they have a loss, but because they enjoy the game and can still win over other player, they might be fine with that. So that's another approach. But
okay, perfect. And regarding the token, so I understood that you have the ID. Do you have any idea about the tokenomics? Did it will be unlimited supply or limited supply? Did you have you already have some thought about that?
Yeah, so I've been thinking about it. So I mean, my initial idea was let's have it infinite to reward people who are participating, but it might not be the best. So it's tricky because the fixed supply kind of limit yourself to a timeline, because at some point this reward that go out. But maybe it's fine because at that point your issue is solved. You have enough player, enough kind of traction to keep the game going, and there is so I'm still not decided. There was also an idea about how to incentivize liquidity pool at the same time. So because another issue is like to ensure that the token is liquid when you launch. So I've been thinking about this stuff a bit, but I was starting as this thought was last year, and then I kind of realized that's probably not the right time, and then I kind of stopped thinking about them for a while now.
Okay, perfect. What about kind of advertising? So if we imagine that you don't focus on the gamer, but you focus on brand that want to advertise to your gamers, did that could be something that you integrate as well as a money channel?
I mean, it's interesting. I mean, because in some way it already happened. In Conquest, for not the current version, but the alpha and the beta, there was basically sponsor price, and so they were giving money, but I was not taking it. It was going to the player, but what I did is that I was putting their logo on the planet in the game. And so it's actually advertisement. And so that could be, I could extend that definitely. The cool thing about that is that I could even automate it. It could even be like completely without any curation. Like if you want to have your logo, you just put your logo and you just deposit money into the planet. And then if the player capture it, he gets the money. And so that's something I think could be really cool to have. But I don't know. Again, like I think it could work. It's just again like advertisement is not a good business model to start with because you need traction to attract. But
yes,
you could start with sponsor and
Okay, perfect. And still with the topic of how to monetize the infinite game, did there is any example that you can point out as a kind of a blueprint, or did there is nothing out there? So my question here, it's kind of did there is any blueprint about how to monetize infinite game?
No, I don't think we have blueprints right now. I mean, there is few example of game right now that are exploring the idea of running forever. I think right now the only one live is Conquest. Some are planning to be infinite, but are currently still running in session. I think one of them is Metreum. And in terms of business model, for them I think there is a sale of some land, so that can be a good way to start. But I'm not sure actually. I didn't look at their latest update, but I think for me in Conquest I didn't consider. So there was this option of like where we were talking about business model. Another one is like instead of people depositing $1 into a planet, they could buy the planet. The reason why I didn't do that is that when you buy it, okay, it's cool, the money go into the company, but then it removes the incentive for other players to capture that planet. Because,
Yes.
so and because there is a gas cost involved in this operation, then there need to be some extra value out. But this is definitely something that could happen too. So and so I think that's what Mitchell is exploring. How do we make like something that is valuable in itself? Because they have all these resources. I don't know in detail enough their game, but what I mean is that the idea of buying resource to start playing could be a way to go about it. But it has some issue, I think, as well on actually, yeah, I think it could work. So it's another potential. But like if you to reply to your answer to your question, I don't think we have a blueprint. I think we are all like trying to figure it out.
Okay, no problem. All right. What would be your biggest problem at this moment?
So I think it's right now, personally, for Conquest, is kind of scaling up to be able to kind of explore things quicker and so kind of scale up as a company and try to be able to explore different things in Conquest and in other games simultaneously. And in general, is how to make it more user friendly. So that's what I've been exploring about how. I mean, it depends. There is different option. One idea is to kind of assume that Conquest is for hardcore players and kind of focus on that demographics. But I'm keen to also explore other game ideas. So it's a problem of choice, maybe, of like focus, trying to think what's the best approach right now to and try out.
Okay, perfect. And today, how your player find you? How player find Conquest?
I think mostly through Twitter. So there is a Twitter Conquest_ETH, and then there is a website Conquest.game. But I think mostly it has been through Twitter and my own Twitter, I think, which we have more followers than Conquest actually, Wigawag. And that's, I think how people find about Conquest. Twitter mostly, yeah.
Okay, perfect. On your bio on LinkedIn, we can read Web3 architect, right? And you have been involved in, the writing of some EAP. What could you say about that?
I mean, that's very interesting. It's very challenging actually to write EIP. It's not so much writing them; it's about having discussion around them. Like, so the one EIP I participated was 1155, and I think it took 2 years, or I don't know. It took a lot of time and discussion to get out. And now the explosion of EIP is, I actually still get every EIP update in my email, and I don't even categorize, so it's gone my mail. But now I really need to stop doing that because I mostly just click to make them as read. And so now it's hard to follow what is going on. And I think the way I see it, some EIP could have been designed better, but going back is hard. So you have to live with what we got. There is still a lot of EIP that make sense that are not there. I think I pushed one recently, but it's hard to to the point where because it's easy to write one, even to have one correct that is make total sense, but then if nobody is aware of it, and if then it's just like
Yes.
it doesn't
irrelevant.
exist. Yeah, and I see there is a lot of push. Sometimes EIP are used as a mechanism to marketing almost. Like it's almost the opposite use of it. Like where.
Do you have any example of that?
I mean, I think the latest one was signing with Ethereum. I think there was this company, I forgot the name, but they kind of push it forward and kind of make their brand around this.
Okay.
And that's fair. And I actually have my own comment of this. I forgot the latest update, but there was some issue I remember with it. But then when you have the marketing anyway, you have the main point I mentioned before kind of solved, because if it's so that's make it almost a viable approach, which block the more grassroots EIP to come up. But yeah, it's tough. I remember, I think I have a few more that I never wrote, some that never made it. But now I'm not really much into them.
Okay, because that take too many time and effort and concentration.
Yes,
okay.
yeah, it's a lot of effort. And I mean, the 1155, I did it when I was working with Sandbox. So it was kind of first part of the job, and it was like, so then the time was there. But as an independent game developer that want to do other things, then it's like, no, I have to give up that.
Perfect. And it's a good thing that you talk about Sandbox and on a game developer. What made you move to working for Sandbox or other to having your own studio? What led you to have this shift?
Okay, yeah. So I mean, I started the blockchain game as an independent from the beginning. So then at some point I ran out of money. I was working for some like company, and then I met Sandbox, and I realized, oh cool, they are making games. They are a traditional game company. Let's work together. But then I also realized that I have my own idea. And then even when I was at Sandbox, I had my own time to work on several things. So actually I work on Eternal which is another game I made while I was at Sandbox. And then I started to work in Conquest around like 2020. And after a year, I realized, okay, I need to focus on this full time. And so that's kind of, realizing that I will be able to push something out. So usually that's kind of, and my experience with Eternal was quite hard to have that, trying to have that game live and then having still a full-time job. So at some point I was working 3 days a week at Sandbox to be able to do this. But then I realized it's better to go full-time and explore. And also when you are full-time, it's very interesting because you have more time to kind of connect with the other player in the space. And so for me, that was really valuable to have this time. I could also write more, so I managed to write a blog post, which usually I would rather build than write, but this time I with more time you can do things that you will not do otherwise.
Okay, perfect. And talking about networking, how do you approach networking? Are you going to some event? It's maybe through podcasting. What could you say about networking?
Yeah, so I think I like to meet people in real, like so I go to. I like to go to hackathons. Like lately, I've been trying to avoid participating because it makes another project to do at the end. But I like being in this environment of people building stuff. And then online, I mean, not. I guess there was. Yeah, there is this group focusing on on-chain game, which I kind of I enjoy participating. I didn't do much like podcast or place to meet, but that I think mostly meeting in real. That's what I enjoy the most. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So you talk about on-chain game groups, right? On which channel?
So there is various, like some is Telegram, some are Discord.
Okay.
mostly these two. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. And do you plan to go to ETH Denver?
No, I'll skip that one. Actually, I come back from a 3 months break. So
Yes, from India. I saw
yeah,
that on.
yeah. So now I'm going to stay for a while. I think. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. And when you went to India, it was for personal kind of matters. It was because you enjoy that part of the world. What
Yeah,
lead you to move?
my wife is from India, so we
Okay.
visited the family. That was the main reason. And I took the opportunity to be there to go to Bangalore for ETH India, but otherwise it was family travel.
Okay, perfect. And would you say that moving to India helps you unlock things that you didn't seen before moving to India?
In terms of Web3, it was interesting, the at India, the focus on decentralization, focus on tech. That was interesting to me because in some maybe Europe or US, there was a lot NFT this, NFT that, and this interesting though, this culture aspect art. But in India, or at least in India, it was interesting to see that most people are really focusing on, how can we have this decentralized? How can we have this other thing decentralized? And I think there was maybe 1 or 2 NFT projects, but I think even of the 2, I think 1 was about trying to decentralize something, if I remember. And of course, being I don't think it's exclusively about India, but about having free time. I think it is good to also have your mind ready to explore things. So I play some games, and actually one of the game I played is the one that I'm exploring to put on chain using zero knowledge proofs. And so that I discovered it by having free time. So it's an interesting way to do things, I think. And yeah.
Okay, perfect. It's serendipity. And would you say that you picture game as a way to find use case with using blockchain?
So yeah, I think one interesting thing about games is that they are basically the only one who have native digital value, and so it's very interesting once we have them, because once we have them, all the DeFi mechanism that we implemented will make sense with values that are completely decentralized. Because in some way, right now we are stuck with saying okay, you have this DAI, or it's now collateralized by, but already you have an Oracle, the need for Oracle. Basically, the cool thing about having a game fully on chain is suddenly we can have Oracle about them on chain without any centralized party. So I think games are really the core, the underlying thing. In the future, all activity, all the things that are fully decentralized will be so. It's almost you can have nation now built on top of this, independent of any. You don't need land, you don't need anything. You can have economic activities completely independent of any central party. And so I think that taking it that way is very interesting. But we are still not there yet. But I think that's the trajectory we are going. And then the interesting thing, all these DeFi thing could be plugged into this without Oracle or any of that.
Okay, perfect. So if I get it right, as you said, game have native digital value, and so it's why you are exploring all use cases that blockchain unlock to bring that to the game.
Yeah, that's one way. Okay, I think I took the question a bit differently, but yeah, it's so I think for me it's the reason why I like building blockchain games. I think it's to some extent it's a bit like maybe just a fascination rather than any logical thing. But the idea of being able to make a game that don't stop after its creation, that kind of live on its own, for me it's the only reason I need to explore this. But after that, it enables things that was not possible before, because you can now have all these economic activities or things that you can build on top. I don't. It's a tough question to say why. Like actually, I remember part of the Telegram group I was in. There was this question, and I answered it a bit like that, but I added some other point which I think I mentioned before in the conversation about like it solves some of the issue also of traditional game. Like, but you have this. So first you have this money aspect, which makes the game even more like immersive, because suddenly you are playing with something that have like a physical reality.
Yes.
The fact that you are losing money and which all that it implies, or and then on top of that, it solves some of the things. Like, okay, I mentioned before, like the lobby. You
Yes.
on an infinite game, you don't need a lobby, and you cannot have an infinite game unless you have this staking and this money aspect. And of course, we could argue, like, okay, we could have Facebook, we trust Facebook to run this game for us, but in practice, it doesn't make sense. It's so much easier for a developer to use like the blockchain to have all these money aspects. So it's a really a true enabler, like the fact that now we can have money into games, and it doesn't need to be money in the traditional sense as well. That's because right now Conquest is really like, okay, it's DAI as an input, but as soon as you have these digital assets that have value for other reason, could be like even artistic, then you can have this thing without having any link to some real world like money. And,
Get it. Okay, perfect. And did there is anything about legacy as well?
Sorry?
Did there is any did legacy? It's maybe also one reason why you exploring all these things.
Oh, yeah. I mean, yeah. I think to have the game run and be there, like,
Yes.
yeah. I mean, so definitely. I mean, it's. But the way I see it is like, I think the fact that it run infinite doesn't mean it will actually run infinite. Like,
Yes. Yes, makes sense.
Because
People have to stick around. Yes.
Yeah, they have to stick around, and you might want to improve the design. I mean, actually, so you want to make a new version. It's also infinite. In some way, infinite it's also a design tool to prevent like the issue that I mentioned, collision, Sibyl. But then also it's true that enable very interesting things. So it enable for games that are not infinite, like if you, let's say you build an extension to the game, you can make it open source and everybody can use it, but that's it. It's a source code that need to run somewhere. But in an infinite game, if you build an extension, the extension run, it's not only source code, it's actually code that run like a smart contract. So it's an interesting thing that infinite game enable, is the ability to build on top. So one thing I would love to see is a game that don't even write back into Conquest, but I use the data of Conquest to build another game on top. And so one interesting thing happened, let's say, I didn't thought about it very deeply, but let's say like you can build things on planets in that other game. So the game reads the state of Conquest. Okay, this is the owner, and maybe this owner gives a right to you to build on top. But what happened is that if the owner on the underlying game on Conquest change, then everything gets destroyed, or maybe 50% gets destroyed. And so what it means is that you can't write back to Conquest, you can only read, but you have another game built around, and then you have incentives to go back into the underlying game to make sure that peace is remain. So I find this fascinating. It's like you have another game that suddenly is incentivized to make sure there is peace at a lower level, and so I think
it's like having several universe, and you have to make all the universe kind of how to say that. So I'm going to use your word. It's at peace between each other.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I mean, maybe not between the universe, but let's say like for example, like they are at peace, but suddenly there is a new player that come in Conquest, and that is attacking the planet on which you build your maybe it's a sim like SimCity type of game maybe, and like you spend a lot of time building this thing, but then you realize, oh, it's going to lose. So you need to go and maybe make a diplomatic like alliance between the
Yes.
two, something like that.
Yes, it's funny that can bring a new kind of gameplay, basically.
Yeah.
Because it's like having interaction between game, so
Yeah.
it's fun to see. But I'm going to share something weird, because when you were talking, not now, but just before, and I had the thought of legacy on my mind, when you were talking, explaining why you are exploring all the use cases for gaming on blockchain. I had a vision on my head about, so it's why legacy pop up. It's I picture a grave, with kind of a display with the game that the person I've built, and it's kind of a celebration about, oh, you are the one that have built that thing, and it's running in a perpetuity. So it's weird, because it's why the word legacy come into my mind, because when you were explaining that, it's a picture that come that come, based on the information that you were exchanging. So maybe you want to comment that or not, but if you want to come out to comment that picture, you are free to do it.
Oh, yeah, I mean, yeah, of course, it will be interesting to look back and say, oh, look, I am there on the history of things. But I will only want that to be the case if the game is meaningful to players. Though it's like, because it's easy to have something that run forever if nobody is playing it. Like, or it's like, okay, so I think for me the first thing is to have player play and have activities around it. I'm not looking for like a mass market. Like I'm looking. I mean, I'm not against it, and I think mass market is going to come, but we are now too early for that. So I don't want to spend my resources on attracting that. But yeah, what I mean like is for Conquest, if I don't need many players, I need players that enjoy. And then after, yeah, of course, for business model, maybe I need to think more about how to scale it up. But at least, yeah, I mean, it's also fine to have the game. Okay, it doesn't work, it cannot continue, and then it stops. But it's true that having the ability to have that game running forever with activity at least coming back with player playing, then it's a achievement, yeah, that I will be proud of. Like, even if like the cool thing about this is that, I mean, of course, it's running currently on Gnosis chain, so it also depends on the future of that chain. But
Yes.
Imagine it stay like it could be funny that nobody play, and then 50 years later, if it's still running, someone discover it and start playing again.
Yes. Get it. Yes. And it's even funnier, because it's like it was too early for its time, but at least as there is a blockchain that the premise, it's to be immutable and to be available in any time, that enables that to happen, and to don't be lost in history. At least you have one shot to be rediscovered, and that someone play again with it. We are running out of time, so I will ask you just a last question, and that question is, what you know right now that you wish that you knew when you started in 2016?
That you can design game with limited gas resource, like with limited computation. That you can design fully on-chain game with limited gas, because it's exactly what I mentioned before. Like the Conquest could have run back then, and I would have done that if I knew it. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you very much for your time, for all your expertise. If someone wants to follow you, it's on Twitter, so it's
yeah, that's the best way. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So I'm going to add your Twitter handle on the description after the live. And thank you again for your time. And
thank you for the opportunity. Yeah.
Yes, and talk later on Twitter. So
Perfect. Yeah. Thanks.
bye, Ronan.
Bye.